thank you again for giving us an hour so we can start what will be an ongoing dialogue about this topic and about resources in relation to the New England Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center. So let's get started. And again, I'm Cedric Woods, Director for the Institute for New England Native American Studies at UMass Boston, citizen of the Lumbee Indian tribe from North Carolina, although I have been residing in the New England region for the last 3 decades. And I have had the distinct pleasure and privilege to live in Pequot, Mohegan territories, Massachusetts, Wampanoag territories, and have worked very closely with Indigenous peoples the entire time I've been here, as well as before I moved into this area. We have a robust team joining us from the University of Connecticut. We have Brian Ford, Chris Aminsky, my dear friend Chris Newell from Sabayak at Passamaquoddy, and my dear friend Carolyn A, who is the principal investigator from the University of Connecticut for this particular project and endeavor. And I'm so very delighted to have this team with us working towards shared goals of finding environmental solutions to challenges faced by tribal communities, whether they be in rural or urban areas and settings. So Carolyn, if you like, I'm going to turn it over to you now to provide the high-level overview for the Environmental Justice Center, and we will have some other guests joining us as well. We do have Cynthia Espinosa from Grantmaker, and Cynthia will talk about that sister organization with the Technical Assistance Center and the role that they play.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm very delighted to have you join us. And I want to tell you that I am very committed to this particular program and all the projects that are ongoing. And we hope to continue serving the tribal nations and all the tribes. I feel quite honored to be able to work with the tribes, honestly. And I've been studying up on the history and all the different developments for New England tribes as well. So let me give a really brief overview. All the information that I am sharing here is not necessarily on our webpage, but our webpage does have a lot of other information that are directly relevant to the grant process itself. So this is a quick rundown in terms of who can request services: nonprofit organizations, community-based and grassroots organizations, philanthropic and civic organizations, underserved communities and organizations, rural and remote communities, faith-based organizations, schools, individuals of underserved communities, local governments, federally recognized tribes, state recognized tribes, and tribal organizations, I must say, utility providers, healthcare providers, and clinics. Honestly, this list is not comprehensive necessarily. This is just what's provided by the EPA. But we do get requests from organizations that go above and beyond the definitions here. So what does our center do? We provide direct technical services. And what does that mean? Number one, we help any organizations that have submitted a technical assistance request, I would just say TA request, to help them prepare for grant proposals and submission of those grant proposals. So in doing so, we will help the organizations that submitted the request to find funding sources, funding resources as well. We provide assistance in the preparation of the grant proposal, review of the grant proposal, and submission of the grant proposal. We'll also go all the way through after the organization has luckily received the grant funding. We help with post-award grant management support as well. And that's actually a really big piece. The second part, of course, is related to the first part on the middle tab here is technical consultations. So in a layman's terms, basically, we have received, for example, requests that tell us, could you look over these documents for us? Because it's no legalese, right? And we all know that federal grant calls tend to be very formal and very, sometimes really dense in terms of the language. So that's one thing that we do. Also, requesters have sent us data that they had gathered or some other documents they have accumulated, and we help them review those documents and give feedback as well. And then from there, we help them plan, perhaps maybe their request may not be, we have this grant deadline, next month. Sometimes it's, could you look these over and tell us what we can do with this information next? So we kind of do needs assessment, strengths and weaknesses analyses as well. So going to the far right, in conjunction with these two different important functions that we serve, we also provide training programs and tools. Our center is the last to launch, so we're still quite new. In the future, you will see more training programs and tools being developed and implemented, including interactive tools and so on, and more educational material that are tailored to each state, for example, or each type of environmental challenges. That's what we've been working on. So we have 4 different themes that we typically address: environmental quality, which is air quality, water quality, land use, waste management, and in general, sustainability in this department. Energy justice, you're familiar with that. But one item that I actually put in here, energy justice, is broadband access, because I know in remote regions and also tribal communities, broadband access is a huge problem. And then we have climate adaptation, in this case, weather, storms, and floods, tornadoes, you name it. And these type of natural disasters have strong consequences. So in this particular aspect, we're looking at environmental and social resilience. And last but not least, environmental health. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the soil beneath us all affect our health. So I'm sure as tribal communities, you are familiar with these health issues, and you might even have some of these issues in your own communities. The other function that we serve is training and education, and this is exactly what we're doing right now. We're having a webinar, and we will have a set of workshops happening. Those are in my plan going forward. So here's a quick overview of how our TA process can work. It's kind of complicated flow chart, but basically all the arrows pointing down are connected to how you will submit a request for technical assistance, and how on our webpage you could find grant resources, how on our webpage you could find how to seek technical service support, and also post award management support. So I won't belabor you with this chart here, and you can see everything is kind of interconnected. Importantly, Cedric is our hero in the room here. He is the one who's taking down the heaviest burden in helping our TCTAC Center to address all the environmental challenges for tribes in New England region. So here's a quick rundown in terms of our intake forms. We have grant type, contact form. These are the different hyperlinks. I won't go to them necessarily, just an overview. Grant type, that's where you can find it. We have contact form, technical assistance request form. We have grant proposal review form. And we are the only TCTAC in this country, out of all the regions, that has a dedicated webpage for tribes. And we had tailored the TCTAC forms that I just mentioned to match the tribe's needs. So we have Native Nations page, we had contact form, technical assistance request form, grant proposal view form, and on the dedicated webpage, you will see Cedric's name prominently displayed as the person who is really in charge of this particular domain on behalf of TCTAC. Here are our direct sub-awardees partners, and you could see there's UMass Boston. We are partnering with EPA. We also partner with New England Environmental Finance Center. This is based in University of Southern Maine, and in fact, Cedric and University of Southern Maine work quite closely together on some other projects as well. So we're all among friends here. And this center really specializes in climate adaptation challenges. And they are experts in looking over financial documents and also helping, including tribal nations, to carve out a good plan forward. We also have kind of sister organization that is very relevant to tribes as well, and that's New England Rural Health Association. Some of you might be familiar with this particular group, and I believe in some of the requests, the way that we do TA services is that I will sometimes pair up Cedric with, for example, New England Rural Health Association if it's dealing with health issues, or New England Environmental Finance Center. And then we also have a partner that's Groundwork USA. You might be familiar with this very large organization that specializes in environmental equity and justice work in urban areas. And then we have Environmental Protection Network, a very reputable nonprofit organization that's working with more than one TCTAC center at this point. They're very experienced and very enthusiastic, and honestly, they're highly committed. So here is where I'm going to turn over to Cynthia, who is the director for environmental justice for New England, or the grant maker in New England. Cynthia?
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you all for being here. As Carol mentioned, my name is Cynthia Espinosa Marrero. My title is not quite a director, but I am working closely with an incredible team in Environmental Justice for New England, which is the name of the Region 1 with New England grant maker. So overall, the Thriving Communities grant making program is national. Again, trying to get funding about $48 million in grants for over the next 3 years related to environmental work. So I am representing part of one of 3 core partners for Region 1 grant maker. I'm with Health Resources in Action. We're based out of Boston, but we work nationally in a lot of environmental and public health work, and also have experience as grant makers related to that field. We work closely with attorneys for community and environment. They are based out of Roxbury. So yeah, wanted to give again a incredible thanks to Attorneys for Community Environment, or ACE Inc. And then we work closely with the New England Grassroots Environmental Fund, which they support a lot, looking at participatory grant making processes. So looking at how do we include community members and others throughout the region to be part of the grant reader and also our grant making committee. So as I mentioned, just overall the grant making program, we have $48 million in funding available. There's 2 different grant categories, and then specifically with different eligibility requirements. We'll name that all grants can be submitted either written and as a slide, slides or presentations, or a video. So we want to make this as accessible as possible to tell your story. And all the requests for proposals are on our website. I can include that in the chat afterwards. And we also have an optional interest form. So this is where our staff are able to, again, give you more specific TA related to the grant making process. We unfortunately cannot look at your pitch or proposal ideas, this is where we're partnering closely with the TCTAC, and we know there is a lot of interest in work there to look at that, but we're here to ask to support you with potentially what are some budget questions that you have, what information to include in your application based on the request for proposal. On our website, we have links to recordings related to a webinar, including budgets and compliance, also quality assurance project plans or QAPs. So there's more resources and information there. And as you see here on the screen, I'll put in the chat, you can also directly email us with your questions related to the grant making program. And highly recommend also, if possible, attending our office hours, if you can. But I am here to also answer questions to the best of my ability. We do have a frequently asked questions page on the website that gives you more information. Yeah, I think that is my time, but I'm here to listen, to answer questions, to assure you all that this grant making program is continuing on.
Thank you. Carolyn and Cynthia, thank you so much for that overview and for the introduction to GrantMaker. Cynthia, I don't know if you're aware of it, but I've done a whole lot of work with Health Resources in Action over the years with my dear colleagues at the Department of Public Health and Bureau of Substance Addiction Services. So it's an organization that we know well and have really enjoyed and gotten a lot out of those partnerships. So now I'm going to ask, if you're willing, if our colleagues would mind introducing themselves and let us know your organization, tribal affiliation if you have one. And Brenda, I know you have multiple hats you're wearing to this event today. So if you can talk about both your role within the tribe and then also the Mystic River Association, that'd be wonderful as well.
Sure. Thank you so much for the invitation. So my name is Brenda. I am the Vice Chairwoman of Eastern Pequot. Been on council I'm in my 33rd year. A little hard to believe. But yeah, so environmental justice and climate change stuff is pretty important to me as stewards of this land for, hundreds of years. But I also am on the board of directors for the Mystic River Watershed, the Alliance for the Mystic River Watershed. And part of that, the watershed encompasses our reservation, which is in North Stoney's in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. One of the longest continuously occupied reservations in the country. So like I said, it's very near and dear. I've been with the Alliance now for almost 2 years. It's a very young nonprofit, but through, good luck and fantastic writing through our executive director, we've been able to, solicit some funds and, hold a bunch of community events. We have over 300 partners. It's grown very, very fast in a very short amount of time. So this stuff is very important. And I'm just so happy and thrilled for Cedric to start this program. And Chris, I'm so surprised to see you here. Not surprised, but I was very happy to see that you were part of this project because I know this is near and dear to you as well. And ironically, I'm actually putting together a cultural team with some Native folks here in New England, in Connecticut, more specifically, to help support the Alliance. That's part of one of my charges. I currently am employed by the Alliance part-time. So I'll be working on putting together cultural folks to help support the Alliance. Because I've always said that if we lived the way the natives lived, we wouldn't be in this mess right now. But here we are. So I am convinced that we can fix this, but it's going to take a lot of us to do it. But I'm, very positive about the future. Also getting into some bioregional stuff, which is important as well, on how our buildings are constructed and so on and so forth. But it's great to be here with you folks. A lot of new faces, or new names, I should say. But yeah, so I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Brendan. Our other dear friends over at Mashantucket are also very much involved in the organization with Brenda. I first learned about it at the Mashantucket Veterans Powwow, chatting with Mike Thomas,
Yep.
who was telling us about all the good work that you all are doing, Brenda. So very happy to have you here with the two tribal nations as partners with that organization, and look forward to working with you very closely in the near future. So I'm just going to call people out as they appear on my screen for you to introduce yourselves. I have Aaron McCormick, and then Dawn Duncan, and then my dear friend, Vern Stanley Peters.
Okay, shall I jump in?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and thanks for the invitation to be here. I'm here with the Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness, and here to learn. I'm on the advisory council. I'm here to learn more and hopefully spread more. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Well, I'll introduce you, Dawn. Dawn Duncan, Cherokee Powhatan, board member for the Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness, professional grant maker, grant writer, who I have collaborated with on numerous workshops, writing grants for various Native organizations and communities, and we'll be inviting Dawn Duncan to co-facilitate a grant writing workshop for this group as well, focused on environmental justice. So you'll get the benefit of her decades of experience and expertise. Kate, are you able to unmute and introduce yourself?
On the advisory council of the Mass Center for Native American Awareness. And so Bern invited me to come listen.
Great, thank you, Kate. Nice meeting you. My dear friend Claudia.
Tagway, I hope you can hear me.
I can.
With all great. Claudia Foxtree. I am on Massachusetts and Pawtucket land out here in the Lowell, Massachusetts area. I am a board member with the Massachusetts Center for Native American Awareness. I'm also a tribal council member with the Guinea tribe and identify as multiracial, German and Taino Arawak. I am a retired public school teacher and have been doing lots of teacher education, professional development, and I run the book groups along with Erin and some other folks for the Mass Center. We do, in all of those capacities, I do a lot of focus on Indigenous traditional knowledge and connections with the environment and choices that Indigenous people and their allies can make to have a more effective, better relationship with the world around us. I recognize a lot of faces here, so hello to everyone as well. And I feel really fortunate to have been with the Mass Center for over 20 years, continuing the work that we've been doing in this community.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Very happy to have such a robust representation from Mass Center as well. It's wonderful. Ibrahim, would you like to introduce yourself? Or he may not be able to introduce himself, but Ibrahim works for me at the Institute for New England Native American Studies. He's a research assistant, and he's the one that sent out the invitations multiple times at my request, and is continuing to update our information. So Chris Newell, I'm going to ask you to please share particularly your additional contacts for Wabanaki territory with Ibrahim, so we can make sure everybody's aware of the resources that we have here. Kathleen Herzea.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Herzea from the Mass Department of Public Health, Bureau of Substance Addiction. Privileged and delighted to be working with Cedric for a number of years now on prevention for youth who are with a Native cultural focus, on working with the grant making workshops that he runs for our folks, and particularly on educating allies and how to be on Native issues. So glad to be here today to see some familiar faces and meet some new people very interested in environmental justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. You may be having some connectivity issues. Jamie Morrison, also works with me at the Institute for New and Native American Studies, particularly in relation to Native youth programming. So what do we bring to the table at the Institute for New England Native American Studies? We are working very closely with the New England Environmental Finance Center on a separate EPA-funded grant, served as co-PI on a recently closed National Science Foundation crisis grant, looking at experience of environmental justice communities, including tribes and Native organizations related to climate change related disasters. I've also been co-investigator with our College of Ed to fund 2 cohorts of teachers, Native teachers in early childhood education, and of course, additional funding cycles through the Mass Bureau of Substance Addiction Services, which is how I got to know Kathleen probably about a decade ago now. And we're continuing that work. And we've also worked very closely with the North American Indian Center of Boston on a grandparents raising grandchildren project. And if you want to learn more about the Institute, for those of you who are unfamiliar with us, this is our webpage. It also has some current news and updates, some publications that we've been involved with, particularly with institutions like the Boston Indicators Project funded by the Boston Foundation. Again, the overall goal, the whole reason we're here is to provide assistance, to help you better identify needs and interest in the area within the understanding framing of environmental justice, to connect you with experts. One of the resources that I don't think all of the technical assistance centers have, but Carolyn and her colleagues at UConn even made sure to have a couple of engineers from the University of Connecticut assigned to the Technical Assistance Center. So that is additional robust support that you may not get otherwise. It's also our goal and role to serve as connectors between us, grant maker is a potential funding organization, and also other potential funding sources to help you serve and meet your community needs. We will be doing additional workshops, particularly around grant writing, developing your ideas, capacity to pursue grants. And also we're available for individual consultation sessions related to grants or other kinds of programs related to the environment that may fit within the framing of the Thriving Communities Environmental Justice Center. So we're here for you. It is our goal to work with you in the capacities and ways that make sense. We'll go past that when we've mentioned them multiple times, a group that we work very closely with. They're part of the University of Maine system. They're housed in Portland at the University of Southern Maine. They have over 2 decades of experience working in terms of finding financing for watershed, stormwater runoff, and other kinds of infrastructure projects. And depending upon the funding stream, some of those are specifically for federally recognized tribes, and others are for communities that fit particular criteria. And one more slide, and that's our colleagues Chloe Shields and Andrea that work with us from this particular organization. And they also do grant writing and management workshops. So lots of different avenues to receive additional resources to build your capacity as it relates to environmental justice issues. And again, climate adaptation planning and project prioritization, something important to think about, to consider, and advancing adaptation projects and policies. And again, many of these might be recorded as well. Next steps, if you have any questions or you want to schedule a meeting, I'm going to ask you to use the main page at the Technical Assistance Center. That way it's recorded by that mechanism as a consultation, and we'll move forward from there. We'll schedule a time to talk. And I will bring in additional colleagues as it makes sense. It could be our colleagues from Grantmaker, from New England Environmental Finance Center, New England Rural Health Association, all of those different entities are partners. And I'm going to get to know our state anchor organization very well and figure out when it makes sense to bring them in also. I hope that you will attend additional upcoming grant workshops that will have an environmental justice focus and emphasis. And please tell your friends, other Native organizations, tribes about this service, and encourage them to engage with us. My goal is to make sure that Grantmaker expends all of their funds and that some of those funds go to tribal organizations. That's my goal. I'm sure that's Cynthia's goal as well. We want to have the most positive benefit for our communities as can occur. Have some questions from those of you who were able to join us today. And also, please fill out a survey, which my colleague from UConn, Chris Aminsky, has placed in the chat. And Bern, thank you for your note. And Tony, welcome, my friend. Glad to have you with us as well. Tony Silva is another board member for Mass Center for Native American Awareness. So thank you, Tony, for joining us. So thank you. Thank you. Other questions? Duncan, Kate, Aaron, Tony, I don't think you've been able to unmute yourself, but if you were Bern, have any questions? Jamie, Ibrahim? Jamie's pretty, yes, Kathleen?
I was just curious around policy change, if organizations can plan to do policy advocacy for certain things that might be in the State House or that kind of thing, or is that limited in this kind of technical assistance?
I could answer. Cedric, go ahead and answer your
No,
question.
I was going to turn that over to you, Carol.
Okay. So I personally do not do advocacy work for this project because we are federal grantees, but throughout my conversations with folks, I did mention each and every time that this work is important, and if to all the communities that we are charged to serve, and if the communities believe that our work is important, I strongly encourage that they contact their legislature, whether it's state or national, congressman, senator, state government, to explain and maybe to share their own experience and insight in terms of how these types of programs could really help bring improvements to infrastructure locally, for example, services, health, and even jobs, education opportunities, and economic development. So that's what I usually say. And so I think that answers your question. And Cynthia could probably answer a question for the Grantmaker program.
Thank you, that helps.
Yeah, I think I sort of echo what you mentioned, Carolyn, and I do know as part of the grant making program, one thing that is not an eligible activity is lobbying. However, education goes far. So one thing to think through is, yeah, any activity that you do, how you're educating both the community and others that are part of your community. So I think I echo what Carolyn mentioned. There are ways, yeah, for you to be creative and advocate for what is happening, or what you all see like environmental justice and climate justice issues that you all want to address. yeah, and encourage you all to think creatively on that.
And I would add in to my colleagues Cynthia and Carolyn. I always think of things in terms of legislative education. And so what I'm doing is making people aware of particular issues, particularly environmental issues that impact or have an undue burden on our particular indigenous community. And that may be something that can be verified and demonstrating, i.e. water quality tests that come back from particular waterways. And Chris, I'm particularly thinking about your folks up north and Mashpee relatives and Narragansett relatives and other Pequot relatives about ponds and waterways that are receiving undue burden and the water quality is at risk due to runoff or other factors. Those are things that science can verify for us. And this is the impact of that runoff on our communities and on the bodies of our community members. That's not political. It's based on science and it's based on health. Those are the kinds of things that we absolutely should be looking to do and to apply for these funds to be able to tell those stories and to center it based on the lived experience and scientific reality of how these things impact us at any point in time. So I always think of it in terms of what's the best way to help educate people as to why this is important and why there may need to be policy change, because there may be a policy that allows for certain kinds of runoff that's creating this problem, this health problem for our communities. So we need to be able to, we can push for that policy change based on science and its negative impact on individual health, or even the health of our homelands and home waters and our non-human relatives, the fish, the turtles, the eels, the reeds, the rushes that live in those areas with us.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Other questions or comments? Yes.
On that,
Kate.
yes, just on that note, do you have examples of other projects that have been funded or a resource where we could see, just to get a sense of the types of projects that typically get funded or have been funded?
Via grant maker, I would have to defer to Cynthia because this is still a very new thing. Cynthia, have you already funded some projects?
We have not, and I think you mentioned it. This is a new grant making program just nationally. We could try to pull and see other regions. I believe Region 3, which covers New Jersey instead of Southern, a little more like East Coast Southern. I believe they're wrapping up what projects they are funding, but we'll name this is a new national grant making program that has just, I think in the fall, started going more live throughout the nation. So we don't quite have an example of projects that will be funded. But yeah, I think I can pull the website from the Region 3 to see if they have anything publicly. I think what we're naming, as you may know, every region is different, every environmental and climate adjusted need is different. So they do have more public information of like criteria and things like that, which we do have in our request for proposals, like the review criteria. So that was a very long answer to saying not quite. We're not yet, and which is exciting, and also like you can get to be creative and wise there. But I will pull that region to see if they have anything publicly shared.
Thank you.
If I might just add something to what Cynthia has said, the requests we receive often could be quite broad, asking for all kinds of different assistance. So in my response, oftentimes I would also recommend some other kinds of funding sources that may not be covered under EJ per se. So I'm sure you're familiar with Department of Energy, USDA, and some other funding agencies that could also meet your needs. So those are definitely things to consider.
Carolyn, thank you for that. And I'm glad you mentioned USDA in particular. Their mandate is to build infrastructure and capacity in rural areas.
Mhm.
So Brenda, I don't know if Eastern Pequot and North Stonington is still considered rural or not, but I know that there are some infrastructure projects that you all are looking for additional funding to do, and so USDA could be a potential funding partner. And Don Duncan, when we do our grant writing workshop, that'll be one of those things that we look at in terms of different funding mechanisms for infrastructure projects, environmental justice projects, in addition to grant maker, because there may be some that are better fits. And I love USDA because they give you a whole lot of feedback in terms of helping you write the grant, because your state USDA office becomes the advocate for your grant to get federal funding.
Cedric, and I wanted to say thank you for that. Sometimes it is overwhelming, to just trying to decide, what's you're eligible for and to apply for and not. And, in the state of Connecticut, I'm sure you know that there's a statute that says that the governor, is supposed to notify the tribes to let them know of grants that they're eligible to apply for. And they have failed miserably over I can't even tell you how long. Well, like I said, I've been on council for over 30 years, so I can tell you it's been at least that. But it goes much more beyond that. So, there's that option. I mean, that opposition as well. Trying to hold the state accountable, for their statutory responsibility as well, which, as you know, of our relationship with the state of Connecticut. So, but I appreciate you saying that.
Sure. Thank you, Brendan. Again, our goal is to think of ways, if people want
Right.
to work with us, we can figure out how to work around them.
Right.
And find
Well,
other
my goal,
funding streams.
is to begin to repair that relationship so that we can work together. In my eyes, it's a win-win. We can't change anything that happened in the past, so all we can do is go forward. So that's my goal, and hopefully, for the next generation, that will no longer be an issue.
Thank you, Brenda. And
Sure.
Dawn dropped in the chat, just agreeing that it's important to be open to a broad range of funding possibilities, and particularly important at this time for us to identify needs and work together to keep attention on them and apply for projects to help our communities. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, John, for that comment. I would add a couple other things. Number one, we receive TA requests about food assistance programs, for example. And in our UConn team, when I'm fully staffed, I will actually have 4 environmental civil engineers, and also someone who's an environmental engineer, environmental scientist as well. They're just not on board yet because hiring is being put on pause. But more importantly, I personally conduct a lot of health research. I am the SNAP education advisor for the state of Connecticut. So I'm quite familiar with food assistance programs. And I just gotten a request, and I'm asking for, the beauty of being at university is we have different kinds of people who could do different things. I reach out to my network of extension services, for example, so I'm able to help these folks. And let's not forget, there are a number of foundations that fund this kind of work. When it comes to health, even food assistance, for example, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which are familiar to all of you perhaps. And recently, I just spent quite a bit of time looking up some of the major foundations that also fund this type of project. So I'm hoping to make that information available on our webpage. I'm very understaffed, so I'm very stretched. So things are not happening as quickly as you think they should happen. Please be patient with us. We just launched. I want to let you know that we are the baby on the scene, actually, because all the other TikToks launched a year and a half ahead of us. And I've been in conversation with them. They usually did not TA request until 4 months or 6 months into their operation. We took our first TA request on the 3rd day of our launch. So we're doing everything we can to reach out to provide assistance to the best of our ability. I just want to assure you that my commitment and our commitment with my colleagues here is definitely there.
Thank you, Carolyn. And we're here to support you as well.
Thank you.
Cedric, if I could add to that, to name here as the grant maker for Region 1, we have created a governance council, which is a body of 12 different individuals throughout the region that help us think through the design of, let's say, the scoring rubric and thinking through how do we create a grant making committee. To name, at least 3 members are in different private foundations, and there's a lot of connections with other funders throughout the region. So the ultimate goal of the grant making program is not only to give out all these $48 million in grants, but also what is a thriving, EJ community within the New England looks like. And that means starting to create more relationships and connections with other resources. So to name that, many of them are tapped in and probably will continue to be tapped in different levels and ways to support the work. There may be, and again, this is not quite promised, but they're thinking through support maybe projects and work that may not be funded or may not qualify for this specific grant making program. So that's an ongoing conversation happening in the region. Wanted to name it, and it's to be continued. So wanted to name that as well. That is happening. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you, Cynthia. Really appreciate that. Yep. Yes, Brenda.
Cynthia, I just wondered, are there any tribal folks on those boards?
Yes, we do have.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Am I right, Brenda? You're from Connecticut?
I am.
Okay. So UConn now houses the National Estuary Research Center. Have you ever been in touch with them before?
Not that particular department or whatever, but I work with Chris on the Tribal Educational Initiative for UConn at Avery Point.
Okay.
So
if you
I have a lot of resources.
I see.
There.
If you want to shoot me an email, if you would like to work with our centers to see what resources they may be able to provide, I would be happy to connect you with them.
Okay. Thank you so much, Carolyn. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Cedric has my all my contact information.
Okay.
I do. I'll get it to you, Carolyn.
All right.
Yeah, and with all the governance council members and anchor organizations that are helping with outreach, they're on our website, so I can put them in the chat as well to uplift who they are.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Of course, Brenda.
Great. Well, folks, we are at time. I want to thank you all. It's been a very quick hour, a lot of information, and I do hope that you visit the web page for the Environmental Justice Technical Assistance Center. Carolyn, I think I'm correct that Chris Aminsky and some of our other colleagues put up a LinkedIn page for the Technical Assistance Center, so you can find us there as well. And I think that that's also just another way to stay in touch with us. You all know how to find me. I am going to encourage you, though, to go and open up a technical assistance request at the page, and it will get referred to me so that formally we can track our work together. So, Brenda, please do that today or tomorrow.
I will certainly do that.
That'd be wonderful. And Don,
is it best to do it for the tribe or for the alliance, you think?
I'd say do one for both is what I would encourage you to do, because some of it's a direct overlap and some is not. Some are tribal specific questions that may be separate from the alliance, like water infrastructure, water and sewer. That's a separate kind of thing that the alliance, I'm sure, is supportive of, but wouldn't necessarily be an alliance specific project. And Chris Newell, any additional projects that we can get from up in Wabanaki country is great. although I'm sure they're probably working with Sherry Mitchell and the Land Justice Institute as the primary state partner in Maine. If
Yes.
there's any additional work we can do to support, and Chris, maybe you and I and Sherry want to touch base to get an idea of what we can do to support them or connect people with them, would be great.
Yeah, definitely. No, there's certainly projects that I can think of right off the top of my head that this funding would serve our communities in Maine for, and happy to help you with outreach with Sherry.
Well, again, thank you all, Carolyn. Appreciate your time on a Sunday, Cynthia, and the rest of my colleagues.